What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court today, being November 9th. I am your host, Sean Murphy, joined as always by my guy, my companion, my other half, my rock, my foundation, Troy Sergey. Troy, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Not a whole lot, Sean, but it's great to be watching some NBA basketball this past week.
Oh, heck yeah, man. I got Warriors Hawks on in the background as we're recording this. Hawks up 15.
Okay. Well, wow.
Yeah. There's been some crazy things going on, man. I mean, you know, it's kind of crazy like how things develop over time as you just kind of watch, you know, the season develop. And, you know, it's been interesting, man. I mean, you know, right now LeBron's in the middle of an injury, so the Lakers are kind of a weird team. There's the stuff with the Celtics that we're going to be getting into. The Hornets started off so hot and now they're below 500.
Yeah, I watched that Hornets Clippers game the other night and felt a little bad because I like the Hornets.
Yeah, they, you know, it's one of those things where like the first week of the season is all of these exciting things happen, and then like the second or third week of the season always just kind of feels like the back to reality. You know, like Brooklyn just they were just on a 5-game win streak for a little bit. You know, James Harden still looking like James Harden. Turns out he can play. Who knew? You know, there's been a lot, man. It's been a chaotic season, but it's not a bad thing. Troy, my biggest surprise, or I guess like the guy that's been impressing me the most in particular, because I love checking out like what the rookies are doing. Evan Mobley, man. Evan Mobley and Ricky Rubio on the Cavaliers. Like, holy cow, dude. They're unreal. What
Cleveland has a good team. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, what have been your thoughts? Like, what are you seeing out of this team? Because it's been special, dude.
Well, it's neat seeing Ricky Rubio kind of revive his career in Cleveland. I very much, I've always liked Ricky Rubio when he was with Minnesota. I think he was a part of that cool draft class of the 2009 with Blake Griffin going 1 and Harden going 3. And I believe Steph going 7 to.
That was the same draft that Steph Curry went, but also the Minnesota Timberwolves, they drafted Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn back to back. And then the Warriors are able to get Steph Curry right after that.
So with that being said, reviving his career in Cleveland is a good thing for him. And I think with Evan Mobley, you know, he's someone that, you know, I remember you and I were both kind of scared before the lottery that he landed in Detroit, just that awkward kind of skinny, you know, not necessarily NBA body that he has, but he's been balling out.
He just had that boomer bust kind of feel. You know what I mean? Like it was, I think you and I both saw what he could be and scared of what he also could have been, just because those kinds of unicorn prospects. I mean, it could be like Kristaps Porzingis back when he was in New York, you know, where Kristaps like went off and he was this incredible player and did all these amazing things on a basketball court. But on the other hand, he could have also been like Kristaps Porzingis now, where like he's just kind of dead weight. You don't really love having him on your team. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So, or that swear word that we don't like saying, Darko.
Why do you do this to me, Troy? Oh my goodness.
We cheer for the same team. We do this to each other.
I know. We don't want to know why do we do this to each other? Because this is from Half Court. We each and every week. Troy and I sit down and talk all things NBA basketball. If you like that, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like this video. Be sure to share with your friends, and be sure to leave us a good rating on YouTube and on podcast services that you love. We post each and every week, and we talk all things hoops. This is the place to be. And with that, Troy, let's get right into it, man. There is it feels like things have been quiet, but also there's so much to talk about. So obviously the Boston Celtics stuff, we'll get to that in a second, but I would be remiss if we didn't bring up the allegations against Robert Sarver that were rumored to come out, and ESPN finally released their article on Robert Sarver. But not only that, Troy, we also have some investigations that are going to be done on the Portland Trailblazers on their president of basketball operations. Troy, what the heck is going on?
Well, I heard about the Phoenix one, Sean, but you're going to have to remind me what happened with Portland.
Yeah. So there's currently an internal investigation happening on the Portland Trailblazers culture, specifically on GM Neil Olshey. I'm doing some research on it right now as we speak, but it sounds like there was some real workplace misconduct, things like bullying his employees. There's also there's been some potential misconduct that's been reported, and so there's really not a lot that we know. Okay. But it sounds like it's really surrounding concerns about the workplace environment, and it has a lot to do with like the non-player personnel, so like people within the organization. So right. I'm imagining that we will learn more, and it's one of those things where we're still learning about it. But at the end of the day, it sounds like he was kind of a dick to his employees. Right. And then so we have that, which sounds very familiar to the situation where a few years ago, I don't know if you remember this, Troy, but there was the investigation in the Mavericks work culture too. Yeah, a little bit. Was where there was like gross negligence and sexism and things like that happening. So whenever you hear like these kinds of things happening, it kind of reminds you that there are things that are bigger than basketball. But also there are some things in this league that are not perfect. So Troy, I'm not sure. Were you able to read the Robert Sarver article?
Yeah, I was. And I was pretty grossed out by that. I think
horrifying. Absolutely horrifying.
Trying to get potential free agents to get strippers pregnant so you could have a family in your city. Therefore, you would sign with them.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
That's just one piece of it. So if you didn't read the article, one of the pieces in the article was that Robert Sarver at one point slighted or joked about the idea about how they should have strippers with the team and have players get them pregnant so that that would give them more of a reason to come to Phoenix, is that they have their families in Phoenix. And so stuff like that, stuff where he would just repeatedly say the N-word, just sounded pretty racially insensitive. There was a story in there about how apparently he pantsed an employee in front of the entire staff. So like there are things in this article, which he apologized about that piece publicly. So there are pieces of this article alone that are pretty damning that he's already admitted to. So then also the things like about the N-word incident with Draymond Green, all the people in this article that are cited and sourced. I mean, this article doesn't get released if there's not, credible sources and stories in this article. So, I mean, it's just believable. It's true. Yeah. This just gives me vibes, very familiar feelings to the Donald Sterling incident with the Clippers. And so I think we are very much heading towards a situation where we could see an owner either suspended, significantly fined, or even banned from the NBA altogether. So Robert Sarver, I was literally going to make a video about Robert Sarver the day that those reports came out, that there was going to be a story written about Robert Sarver. I was literally going to do it based off of the DeAndre Ayton contract discussions that were happening earlier, where he wasn't going to get picked up because I was going to talk about how he's cheap and how he kind of does all these things to the community in Phoenix. But now to hear that there's some things that are deeper than that going on in the organization. I have full faith in David Stern. I have full faith in the NBA that they're going to do the right thing.
Sean, David Stern passed away. Adam Silver is now our commissioner.
Adam Silver, my apologies, I misspoke. I grew up in the David Stern era, so for me, I even though I know it's Adam Silver, I fully trust Adam Silver. But they're just absolutely horrific stuff. Chris, Troy. I even go back to Chris Noblet. Man, my head is all over the place right now. This story just got me all over. But
shout out to Chris Noblet, by the way.
Yeah, shout out to Chris Noblet at Nobzilla34 on Twitter. To go send him some weird love. But anyway, Troy, if I'm Chris Paul or if I'm Devin Booker, how do you handle this situation as a player?
Yeah, I mean, you have to speak out against it. You have to publicly say something. I think these guys in the press conferences, they're probably going to have to be a team press conference about the situation. And I don't think this is going to be an extremely difficult thing for them to do, Sean, to be honest with you. I think this is something that I think they're going to naturally respond to the way any other decent human being would, right?
Well, so but on the other, I agree from like a humanity standpoint, there's an obvious way that you have to respond, which is, we support the investigation. We hope, whatever needs to get done gets done. But I mean, on the other hand, you have to play basketball and you're still technically representing this person.
Right.
And you are representing this person who has these horrific allegations against them.
Well, do you remember?
Chris Paul, he had to play on the Donald Sterling team. He was on that team when all that was going down.
I was just going to go there with the Donald Sterling situation do you remember the next game when all that came out, they all went onto the court and they took off their warmups and they placed their warmups because they didn't want to be associated with the organization at that moment. Right. So I can see something similar like that happening with this. So, at the end of the day, it's basketball, you're under a contract, you have to play, but something to protest in a way like that, to speak out against, these guys aren't going to have to boycott at least playing games, but a public stance, whatever that looks like. I have a lot of faith in, especially Chris Paul, the former president of the Players Union. So I have faith in those guys.
Yeah, I do too. I think, ultimately having a guy like Chris Paul who did face that situation before, and a guy like Devin Booker who, he's just there to hoop. You know what I mean? I definitely think that, especially after a finals run that they had, I think they know where their head's at. They know that they have a mission in front of them. It's just unfortunate, especially for a franchise like Phoenix, to have guys like James Jones as the general manager, to have guys, like Monty Williams, the head coach, like all these great people in this organization that have worked so hard to put them in the position that they're in now. That they have to deal with this on top of it. You know what I'm saying? So, hopefully whatever comes out, I hope, I just hope, the best for the victims and for the families and all the people that have to deal with these things, because, just absolutely terrible, man, and, I think, there's really not much more to say other than that. I hope there's not many other situations like this around the league. I hope that these organizations can have better representation and that we can just keep moving forward and keep just doing better. You know what I mean? So that's just all you can hope for. But we'll see how that develops. I'm sure we'll have some news in the next couple of weeks. I mean, these investigations, you have no idea how long they can take. I mean, this is a deep dive into the organization, how they run their business and how they conduct things. So we'll see what comes out. So
we shall see.
I hope when they do, they don't pull an NFL where they don't release the full findings and the full reports, because I think the NBA, what they do well compared to other leagues is that transparency factor. And I just hope they keep that going, So
I agree, Sean.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. Speaking of transparency, maybe in Boston, there's been a little too much transparency, Troy, because there has been some real turmoil. So first, let's talk about the fact that the Boston Celtics have already had a players only meeting this season. Did not take long, but they had one. Following their loss to the Chicago Bulls, where they completely collapsed, they were up by 19 points in the second half, but they were outscored 39-11 in the fourth quarter. And at that point, they had dropped to 2-5 on the season. They are 4-6 right now, so they are a little better. However, not looking great right now in Boston. Not the start that they're hoping for. 24th in the league in opposing points per game. So far, that physical mentality, that shift that they're trying to make on the defensive end, not working. And there's kind of been this looming thing for a while where it feels like the Celtics are just kind of getting worse. Mm-hmm. And that this Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum pairing that Boston is banking their future on is not looking great. And this players meeting kind of sparked by public comments that Marcus Smart made, which he said, quote, "There's only so much I can do without the ball in my hands. I just stand in the corner. When we're running plays for your best players, every team knows that, and they do a good job of shutting that down. We can't allow that. When they shut that down, we can't keep trying to go to those guys. We got to abort that and find them another way to get them the ball in spots that they need the ball. And like I said, for me, I can only do so much standing in the corner when I come up and give the ball away. Every team knows we're going to Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, and every team is programmed and studies to stop Jason and Jalen. I think everybody's scouting report is to make those guys try and pass the ball. They don't want to pass the ball, and that's something that they're going to learn. They're still learning, and we're proud of the progress that they're making, but they are going to have to make another step and find ways to not only create for themselves, but create for others on this team."
Yeah.
So
that's a frustrated statement, or a statement out of frustration, I should say.
That is a brutally honest statement to make about two of your best players, let alone to make those statements public.
Yeah. Yeah.
And reports suggest that this players meeting wasn't exactly productive. And it sounds like there was some frustration entering and leaving that meeting. Troy, of course, Brad Stevens, no longer the coach. He is now the general manager or the president of basketball operations, because apparently in the Boston Celtics, when you fail, you get promoted. But also Ime Udoka, who at one point was the runner-up for the Pistons coaching job when Dwayne Casey was hired. He is currently the new coach of the Celtics, and things so far are looking a little rocky. So Troy, there's another piece to this Boston Celtics story we'll get into in a minute. But what's happening in Boston? Mm-hmm. Because
and I think this. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this was an Eastern Conference Finals team a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they made it there in the bubble.
And I think that's where our story has to begin. And maybe not even that year, but the year before, when they got bounced by Milwaukee in the semifinals. This is kind of a team that has tried to keep a lot of its core together, which is fine. That's great when you're trying to build off of that. But the problem is it hasn't really gone anywhere, and they haven't really added any of those absolute pieces to that Boston team. So I think, where they're failing at is they don't really have a mission mindset of what is the goal or purpose of this team moving forward. It's kind of just, we're banking on the talent that they have to take us to the promised land, when it hasn't happened ever. Right. So the definition of insanity is doing something over again that didn't work, or
expecting things to change. Yeah.
And expecting a different result. When I don't think this Boston team is capable. No, I believe they're one superstar away from being, a contender, but they haven't done.
Where does that superstar come from?
Exactly. And I don't know, Sean. I don't know if I don't know if that superstar exists, to be honest with you. So I think with this Boston years, it's a lot of years of frustration, a lot of years of failed talent. I think of, I'm not talking about football here, but I'm a Packers fan, and it's just wasted talent over years, right? There's nothing that's been done, to push you over the hump. And I see that with this Boston team, a lot of similarities to that. And, I think a player like Marcus Smart, who's been around that team for so many years now and has the same result, if not worse results, I see very much frustration and a lack of a goal, a team-oriented goal.
Yeah. I mean, it just feels like it just feels like there's just fundamental flaws at every level of the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for starters, when you have a guy like Danny Ainge who, towards the end of his career, I mean, obviously he drafted great, accumulated a lot of talent, but let's be honest, almost every single major move that the Boston Celtics have done in the past 5 years has been a failure, right? I mean, let's start with, the Al Horford acquisition was a success, but I would argue you underachieved with him on the roster. You didn't go where you quite thought he was going to take you. I think the Kyrie Irving trade, that was nothing short of a failure with
disaster.
With how he kind of came in and just halted the development of Jason Tatum by a year. He kind of just made the team dynamic worse and arguably maybe even developed some bad habits in that locker room. You have the Gordon Hayward acquisition, which that never panned out the way that you hoped, especially when you were banking on building around Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, and Jason Tatum. I mean, that was your future. For years, they were positioning themselves to be the team to get Anthony Davis. And then Anthony Davis never really wanted to come to Boston. You're not really a free agent destination. You're putting a lot of money into Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. So now your salary cap is tied into those two players. But the problem is that for whatever reason, they can't play together. And they haven't learned how to play together.
In what, 3 years now? 4? 3?
Yeah. 4 or 5 years now. Yeah,
this will
4
be
years.
fourth.
Yeah. So these guys are extremely talented. Like, that's not a secret, but at a certain point, like, superstars have to learn how to play together, because there's some truth to what Marcus Smart's saying, in the sense that when you have two stars in your team, oftentimes the offense just becomes whose turn is it to score. You know what I'm saying? It's like, all right, it's, Jalen Brown, it's your turn. We just ran plays for Jason. It's your turn now, or vice versa. Right. Which, that's not how you run an offense, especially at the end of the game. You know what I'm saying? So, they have, I think some of it's a coaching issue. I think some of it's a development issue. I think some of it's on the players, especially, Jalen and Jason, like, you guys are the future of the Boston Celtics, right? I mean, and you have talent that's on par to be as great as, they have the ceiling of Larry Bird's, you know what I'm saying? Like, as far as talent goes,
yeah.
Jason Tatum is, he's what, like 24 still? 24, 25 years old?
No, he's 23.
Wow. You know what? Like, my point exactly, right? Like, the fact that we're looking at these guys, Jason Tatum's 23, Jalen Brown's 24, 25 years old. There just hasn't been this switch yet where we've seen them play winning basketball. And, which is crazy, because just a couple years ago, you were, right? And so, you could argue that some of the players that they've lost over time, Marcus Morris, I really liked in a Boston Celtics uniform personally.
Avery Bradley before that. Good Avery Bradley.
Yeah, Avery Bradley. Jay Crowder at one point. I mean,
Aaron Baines.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know, man. It's just, they bring in Dennis Schroeder, who, he's been fine. Um, I just, I just got to be honest, man. Part of me thinks that this Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum conversation, if this season they end up being a play-in team again, I think it's, and with the reports that we're seeing, it looks like Boston's starting to question if that's the pairing.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And speaking of that, maybe this is the time to discuss it, Troy. According to Shams, who, if there's two guys we trust, it's Woj and it's Shams, right? According to Shams, the Boston Celtics are reportedly interested in Ben Simmons. Now reports suggest that there would be no trade package that Philly would accept that would not include the likes of a Jason Tatum, or not Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown. So it looks like that would be the centerpiece of a trade package between those two teams. So the concept would be a Ben Simmons, Jason Tatum front court. Troy, I don't think it's crazy. I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't think.
Sure.
I would argue it could be more of a natural pairing than Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum, just because of the fact that Jalen and Jason play such a similar offensive game of being ISO heavy scorers that can create the offense with their, on their own, but can't exactly create offense for others. And you have Ben Simmons, who can't really create offense for himself and almost only creates offense for others. It's not crazy.
I kind of see where you're coming from, Sean. However, I think if the locker room is already having some tension, and I know you say Ben Simmons doesn't create a lot of offense for himself, but he does play a lot of ISO ball. And I think, enough ISO ball.
Not necessarily though, just because sure, if you're on the fast break, he definitely, and there will be times where the way that an offense would work around Ben Simmons, right? It would be very similar to, very similar of an offensive scheme to what you're running with Giannis in Milwaukee, right? Where he it's a drive and kick system, very similar to what, Dwayne Casey runs, which is not ISO ball, by the way.
But I also think, Sean, if Boston were to make a move like that, I think that would, at least their mindset would be a win now situation. And I don't know if that creates a win now, because we've seen Ben Simmons fail again when the pressure says it's crunch time, right?
I disagree though. I disagree in the sense that I don't know if it creates a win now. I think there would be more patience to try and put that together. There would be more patience with that lineup than there would be with this one, I would argue, because of the fact that Jalen and Jason have been together for years. They've made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Ben Simmons and Jason Tatum, I feel like people would at least give them the time to put things together. I think Ben Simmons, it would be the story of how is he going to recover from the Philadelphia situation? What is he going to look like when we see him back on the court? What is he, what would his expectations be? Now, the one thing about this move is the fact that Ben Simmons would be going from a sports market in Philadelphia to a city that's almost as crazy as Philadelphia in Boston. Talk about a city that demands winning, right?
And that's where I'm getting at though, Sean, is demanding winning. And honestly, now,
the patience is running short 100%, but listen, man, at a certain point, you got to do something different. But the problem is that the only opening and the only way that you can do something different involves trading Jalen Brown or Jason Tatum.
I'm on board with that. I just don't know if Ben Simmons is the right guy to bring in.
Oh, I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he is.
Okay, we're on the same page.
No, I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying it's not crazy.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying is that I, because my gut reaction was like I vomited in my mouth. I'm going to be honest with you. I read that. I was like, oh, as a Jason Tatum fan, as a Jalen Brown fan, because I want those guys to succeed together. But bloody hell, man, how many?
It's not working.
At a certain point, we can look at the sample size. We can look because, it's not a coincidence that these guys have gotten better over the past couple of years, yet the team is getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's happening, like, there's a problem. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there is a real problem that's got to be, like, as uncomfortable as it might be for people, like you gotta talk about it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think you do somewhat have to blow up those two right now because patience is running out.
Yeah.
And we know that they work together, but not to a point of, in my opinion, in finals contention.
No, right now, they're a playing team.
Mm-hmm. I'm just saying the Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum tandem. But yes, this Celtics team is a playing team, but of the past, they've had Eastern Conference Finals teams.
Yeah, and they're definitely not there right now. I mean, if the playoffs were to start today, they would be a playing team. Now, granted, if the playoffs were to start today, Milwaukee would be a 10th seed. Something tells me that's not going to happen.
And Cavs would be a 7th.
Cavs would be a 6th seed if the playoffs were to start today.
6th, okay.
The Washington Wizards would be a 4th seed, man. What's going on? Oh, my goodness. I mean, yeah, it's just, I just look at this team and, listen, I want to say that I'm optimistic about their future, but I'd be lying.
Mm-hmm.
I think, this is beginning to look like one of the next situations that we're going to be looking at and saying, do they got to blow it up?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think we got to start looking closely at what's happening. Because, there's no team I hear about having more players only meetings than the Boston Celtics. That's all I'm saying. And if you're having that like less than 10 games into the season, there's a problem. So I hope Boston gets it figured out. I don't think they're gonna. I think Ime Okuda's got a really tough job, and I think if there's anything they got to figure out, I think it is how they're going to develop that offense. And I think, I think Jason Tatum's got to take the next step. I think he's kind of been hovering at this same kind of player now for a couple years. And I think Jalen Brown is kind of becoming what he's going to be. This team's going to only go where Jason Tatum takes him. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah. Finally.
And I think he's only, and I personally think he's going to be better served if he figures out how to win with Jalen Brown and they can entice a guy to come play with him, Yeah. Maybe they're going to have to look at trading Marcus Smart at some point. Maybe they got to make a change there because maybe he just isn't helping their culture. Maybe they just don't like playing with him. You know what I'm saying? So obviously I'm personally a Marcus Smart fan, but I can't lie. That's not a great thing to say from a teammate standpoint. So we shall see. Before we get into Troy's segment, though, I do also kind of want to talk about Cade Cunningham real quick,
absolutely.
The Pistons. Last podcast we told people to calm the hell down. And
it kind of worked.
People calmed down, but also Cade Cunningham started to ball out a wee bit. More than a wee bit. The Brooklyn game, he hooped.
Mm-hmm. He sure did. And those are some of the best talent he's going to see all year. He played
his best in his hardest game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 18 points. Am I right with that?
Yeah. And he went, not only 18 points, but also he went 6 of 16 from the field. He shot, so I have the full stat line right here. So he went 17 points. Okay. He shot 6 of 17 from the field, but he shot 3 of 7 from the three. So vastly improved 3-point shooting. He really was doing well from passing as well. He got 4 rebounds. he went right at Kevin Durant. He went right at James Harden. Listen, man, for a guy that was only his 4th game in the league, pretty freaking good, man.
And not just that game, Sean, but the Sixers game, he somewhat balled out too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. His first 2 games. I saw a meme where it was like Cade Cunningham his first 2 games, and it was the Cade Cunningham like before 2K fixed how he looked, like where he had that super crappy face scan. And then Cade Cunningham last 2 games, and it was all fixed. He was like, yeah. And I was like, yep, spot on. He's been absolutely hooping. So as of recording tomorrow, or as of the time this episode comes out, tomorrow night we got Jalen Green versus Cade Cunningham. That's coming up. What are you expecting, Troy?
Yeah, I'm expecting a good, hard fought game on both sides. I think we'll see Cade go off, I think, to a degree. I think same effort level. I don't know about stat wise, same effort level though as the Brooklyn game. And I see Jalen Green definitely having a chip on his shoulder, whatever that means, of him not going number 1 and showing why, whatever that means. So I see a lot of shooting. Well, we'll see a lot about the maturity of Jalen Green, I think, tomorrow night, Sean, because I think we'll see Jalen Green could shoot the ball every time he touches it. Let's be honest. Or at least trying to make plays or playmaking or be a playmaker in situations where there's no opportunity to. I see that tomorrow night. So it's
gonna feel very similar to that summer league game. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was my next point. Is it's gonna be a summer league-ish game. So that's what I expect.
Yeah, I mean, I think from Jalen's perspective, I definitely see that. I think Cade's just gonna keep doing his thing. You know what I mean?
He's not worried about the hype.
No, he's not. And I mean, he's publicly said it. He's just worried about getting wins. I mean, listen, the Pistons and Rockets, they both only have 1 win at this point. They're showing why they had to get the number 1 and number 2 overall pick, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
And both have played pretty well in spurts. Both have shot pretty terribly in spurts. So I expect a fun game, and I don't expect anything of value to come from it. It's going to be a good time. But with that, Troy, it's time to head from Mount Rushmore. We're not doing a Mount Rushmore today, but we're just
from Ann Arbor.
From Ann Arbor. Whoa, yeah, I like that. From Ann Arbor. What are we talking about today, Troy?
We are going to be talking today about the friendship, legacy, and fallout turmoil of 2 basketball greats, both Michigan Wolverines, both members of the Fab Five, both NBA players. Did Jalen Rose ever make an All-Star game? Maybe not.
I don't know if he was an all. Let me look it up. But I don't think he was, but I'll look it up.
2 very well-known faces of the NBA, Jalen Rose and Chris Webber.
Yeah, two well-known faces of the game of basketball for sure.
Yeah. So I'll start talking a little bit what I know about their upbringing, a little bit with before college, and you can chime in literally whenever you want, Sean. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so what I know about that situation is I believe Jalen Rose and Chris Webber met in 7th grade. They were on the same AAU basketball team, and definitely more inner city level Detroit area. Kids definitely, on the poverty line, not necessarily came from money, either one of those. So, having a hard work ethic was definitely something engraved in them. And they had a great AAU team together. And I think Chris Webber, when he was in 8th grade, was named number 1 middle school player in the country, I think, in that early 90s, late 80s era right there. And going to Detroit Country Day, I believe, is where Chris Webber went to high school, and they were state champions, I believe, his freshman year. So that's pretty cool to have that as a 14-year-old of being a state champion. And I believe Jalen Rose had a good career in more of the inner city style, because Detroit Country Day would definitely be a little more college preppy type of atmosphere versus Jalen Rose high school experience, definitely in the inner city. But they still had that camaraderie through AAU basketball. And I believe Chris Webber declared for Michigan his senior year to play for the Wolverines. And that is what hit it for Jalen Rose. He also declared for the University of Michigan. He wanted to play with his old AAU teammate, and they were greeted by 3 other freshmen, Juwan Howard, Jimmy King, and Ray Jackson, and that made up the Fab Five. And there was some turmoil that we'll get to soon that kind of sparked a lot of it. But during this time, there was a well-known Detroit guy by the name of Ed Martin. And Ed Martin was known for giving young players gifts, money, literally whatever they asked for. He was a multimillionaire. And his catchphrase would be, hey, I'm giving you these new shoes. Hey, I'm giving you $100. Hey, just remember me when you're back in the NBA, right? Hey, I'm giving you all this free stuff now. When you're in the NBA, that's when you can pay me back, okay?
Yeah, you have these 2 kids who,
who
come from nothing, and you have this guy that's willing to take care of you and support you, and buy you things and treat you well, and and they were pretty close to him.
Absolutely. And Jalen Rose was definitely involved with Ed Martin, but not to the degree Chris Webber was. Chris Webber and Ed Martin were a lot closer, mainly because probably Chris Webber had the biggest ceiling, right? I mean, Chris Webber was the sky's the limit for him, being, one of the top high school players. So when Ed Martin was given Chris Webber stuff, he knew that in return, when Chris Webber would make the NBA, Ed Martin would be getting a good old paycheck from his buddy Chris Webber. So they play at University of Michigan. They didn't have the best regular season their freshman year, but they did crack the starting lineup towards the end of the year of all 5 freshmen. And that was the first time done, I believe, in NCAA history of 5 freshmen being started. And they made it. They were not an extremely high seed. I want to say 6, 7, or 8 around there in the NCAA tournament. And they made it all the way to the Elite 8 their freshman year. Is that right, Sean? Yeah, Elite 8, where they lost, but that was kind of more of the coming out party for the Fab Five. They were definitely heavily ranked their sophomore years, the Fab Five, going into that season, and they were by far favorites to win. And there was an incident in the NCAA championship game. I believe that was Duke versus Michigan. Chris Webber got the ball. They were down by 1. He traveled, and they did not call the travel. He dribbled the ball to the Michigan corner and called a timeout. And
when they were out of timeouts,
Michigan did not have a timeout. Duke went on to shoot 2 free throws and have the ball, and there was nothing that Michigan could do at that point. And Duke, led by Grant Hill, that was Grant Hill's team, won I believe it was that 1991 NCAA championship. And Chris Webber declared for the draft that year. He was selected number 1 by the Golden State Warriors, and he was traded on draft night, which the last time we saw that, well, it wasn't even a draft night, but was Andrew Wiggins getting drafted by Cleveland and getting traded to Minnesota, a similar scenario. But he was drafted by Golden State number 1 and immediately got traded to Orlando, I believe, maybe.
No. So Chris Webber played he played out his rookie year in Golden State.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And then almost immediately, pretty quickly in his tenure in Golden State, he got traded to he went to the Washington Bullets for a couple years.
That's what it was, yeah.
And then he went to Sacramento.
Where his mainly his career was at. His definitely peak was in Sacramento.
Yeah, 100%. That was definitely his mainstay in his home. But yeah, Chris Webber did not get along very well with the organization over in Golden State.
Yeah.
And I mean, but ultimately, kind of what did it in for those guys was, during Chris Webber, when he went to the NBA, and kind of left those guys behind, there was the investigation and the kind of the Fab Five, which ultimately left the Fab Five team forgotten and kind of put to shame.
Mhm.
And the Michigan Wolverines kind of had to move on without him, and
Mhm.
so I think there
Yeah.
was a lot of finger pointing and there was a lot of blame that went a lot of different directions. And I think Jalen Rose was critical of Chris Webber and felt hurt by some
Mhm.
of the stuff that had happened. I think Chris Webber felt ostracized and kind of felt um, pushed away by the Michigan Wolverines and by his brothers
Yeah.
of the Fab Five. And I think they're kind of in this weird spot now where, Juwan Howard is back at U of M. He's the
Mhm.
head coach, and quite frankly, he's made that program prominent again. They were already a great program, but he took it to a different level, getting
He did.
5-star recruits coming back to Michigan. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So,
He definitely did.
yeah. So now it just is in this really unfortunate situation where, Jalen Rose and Chris Webber were best friends, and now that's a friendship that might never fully recover.
Right. And I think, going back to the Ed Martin stuff, I believe Chris Webber may have lied under oath and saying a lot of these stuff never happened. And I think that hurt Jalen a lot because Jalen was around him as a teenager and knew
Mm-hmm.
definitely all this stuff happened. And so I don't think Jalen Rose took that very well. But I believe the university, because this how a lot of the stuff too didn't just happen when they were teenagers. Well, I guess when you're 18, 19, you're still a teenager, but when you're enrolled in university, he was still doing a lot of the stuff with Ed Martin, and
Right.
that's where the NCAA came involved.
Yep.
And if you walk into the Chrysler Arena in Ann Arbor where the Michigan Wolverines play, you will not see a banner from the Fab Five, Chris
Right.
Webber's team, Jalen Rose's team, one of the most recognizable NCAA double teams of all time, who won banners. You will not see a banner because the NCAA took those banners away because of the
Yeah.
criminal investigation from
Yeah.
Chris Webber
Stripped
with
them
the Ed
of
Martin.
stripped them of their Final Four appearances, stripped them
Yep.
of those accolades, and
Yeah.
that's where the Fab Five's legacy unfortunately was tarnished, right? And so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think you have both. I think Jalen Rose, and the Fab Five guys, they have a right to be upset because it's
Yeah.
like, they a lot of what they worked for and a lot of what they
Mm-hmm.
played for kind of was taken away, and it's kind of a it's kind of a situation that is very reminiscent to like kind of the
Mm-hmm.
beef of Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, of these
Yeah.
guys who accomplished great things together. But unfortunately, whether it's egos, whether it's allegations and things that happen, unfortunately, things can get in the way. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And so,
Absolutely. And another thing too, I thought was interesting, I heard was, remember in 2000, well, you remember, you're a Michigan fan, in 2013 when the Wolverines went to the Final Four, or went to the NCAA championship and lost to Louisville.
mhm.
So I believe the Fab Four minus Chris Webber all sat together at the game. Like they
Yep.
were sitting together and cheering him on. Well, Chris Webber was also at the game, but he was in a box.
Yep. He was in a suite. Yep.
In a suite, getting luxury food service, whatever, watching the game,
Mm-hmm.
when the crew was together. And I guess they had invited Chris to sit with them, but he's
He
like, no, I'll
declined.
stay in
Yep.
my suite. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that rubbed them the wrong way too, of, our team hasn't been in the national championship since we were playing, and now they finally are, and you don't even want to have a reunion with any of us. Like, I think that caused some beef too with them. So I think that criminal stuff with Ed Martin, I think the beef with leaving that team behind to go to the NBA, I think rubbed a lot of those guys the wrong way, especially their upbringing in the inner city. It's just it's a sad tale.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know a few months ago when Chris Webber was inducted into the Hall of Fame, I think Jalen Rose's show, they zoomed in with him on Zoom, and I think they had a little conversation, told each other they loved each other. But that was the first time I think they've talked in a while. So I don't know if the friendship has completely rekindled, but at least there's signs of hope from what I've seen. So
yeah. So there's one of my favorite YouTube channels, and it's part of it's also a blog or a website, part of SB Nation. The channel's called Secret Base, and one of the things that they do is they do a lot of retrospective and storytelling pieces in sports.
Yeah.
And one of their best series is beef history, where they look at the history of a beef between two people in sports. And one of their best episodes is their Chris Webber, Jalen Rose story. And so they actually do a really good job of doing a deep dive into that. So I would look that up. So I'll even link it down below as well.
Yeah, please do that, Sean.
Yeah, I'll even send it to you after this. I would recommend watching it. It does a really good job of explaining the history of the beef, the history of their relationship, and giving the full story of the context. It's an absolutely great watch. You know, and I think I think it speaks on to, you know, I think it's kind of this, it's a sad story of things you see in sports, but also things that you see in the NBA or in basketball is where, you know, things can get in the way and things can, you know, break relationships. I mean, I think we even saw Kevin Durant and what happened with the Golden State Warriors, where, you know, the Warriors kind of pushed him away. And, you know, that kind of fell apart quickly. So, you know, there's just so many situations like that, you know?
Yeah.
And
people, everyone's different. Personality clashes, I think, are the biggest thing too. We see a lot. So.
Absolutely. And I think that's like a situation that you can look back upon and talk about. And you know, it's sad, but I think, you know, hopefully, Juwan Howard, he did invite Chris Webber to come back to Michigan at any time, and I hope he takes that. And I hope the Fab Five can be celebrated, because I think the Fab Five, they changed the culture of hoops forever.
Absolutely. And that would be the first reunion in a while, because Chris Webber actually was banned from campus for 10 years. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes, he was. Yep. That was part of the deal of taking away those accolades, as, you know, the mention of the Fab Five, like, you know, like everybody was, man. It was sad. But you know, that is absolutely a situation that we'll definitely keep looking at. And I think it's definitely something that's always interesting to talk about. But there's always things interesting to talk about on this channel, because this is From Half Court, where each and every week Troy and I sit down and talk all things basketball. Be sure, again, if you like that, to subscribe. Be sure to like, and be sure to share with your friends. Be sure to leave a positive review and comment down below, and be sure to join the conversation. With that, I've been Sean Murphy. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean Halfcourt, and you can follow Troy on Twitter at Troy Sergey 44. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.